Before we get started, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing in this episode is medical advice, legal advice, or a recommendation to use any substance in or on the human body. Always do your own research and follow all applicable laws and regulations. Today we're talking about why copper peptides are everywhere right now, and I mean everywhere. Skincare, research circles, podcasts, social media, product labels, and pretty much any conversation around regeneration, anti-aging, or skin repair. If you've been paying attention, you've seen the name come up again and again, especially GHK-Cu. So the real question is, why now? Why did copper peptides go from something almost no one talked about to something that's basically taken over the conversation? Let's break it down in a way that actually makes sense. First, we need to understand what copper peptides are in simple terms. A peptide is just a small chain of amino acids, and in this case, it's bound to copper. The most well-known one is GHK-Cu, which stands for glycylhistidylylysine copper. That sounds complicated, but what matters is what it does. Copper peptides act as signaling molecules. That means they don't just sit on the skin or in a solution. They send messages. And those messages tell your body to do things like repair, regenerate, and remodel tissue. That's the key word here, signaling. A lot of older skincare ingredients were more passive. They moisturized, they coated, they protected. Copper peptides are different. They're active in a way that actually communicates with your cells. That's a big reason you're seeing the shift. Now let's talk about timing, because copper peptides are not new. They've been studied for decades. There are studies going back to the 1970s and 1980s showing their role in wound healing and tissue repair. So, why didn't they blow up back then? Simple. Technology and awareness. Back then, most people didn't have access to this information. There was no social media, no podcasts, no communities breaking things down. Research stayed in labs and journals. Now, everything is different. Information spreads fast, and once people start seeing real-world results, it accelerates quickly. That brings us to the second reason copper peptides are everywhere now, and that's visible results. When people use copper peptides correctly, especially topically, they often notice changes in skin texture, tone, and overall appearance. Things like improved elasticity, smoother skin, and a more even look. And when people see results, they talk about it. That creates momentum. One person shares, then 10, then 100, and suddenly it's everywhere. Now, let's go a little deeper into what copper peptides are actually doing. One of the biggest things they're known for is supporting collagen and elastin production. Collagen is what gives your skin structure, and elastin gives it flexibility. As we age, both of those naturally decline. That's where wrinkles, sagging, and loss of firmness come from. Copper peptides help signal the body to produce more of these structural proteins. Not by forcing it, but by encouraging natural processes. They also play a role in remodeling. That means they don't just help build new tissue, they help break down damaged or old tissue so it can be replaced. Think of it like renovation, instead of just patching things up. Another big factor is inflammation. A lot of skin issues and really a lot of aging in general comes back to inflammation. Copper peptides have been shown to help modulate inflammatory responses, which can lead to calmer, more balanced skin. So now you've got something that supports structure, encourages repair, and helps calm things down. That combination is powerful. And that leads into the third reason they're everywhere, which is versatility. Copper peptides are not just a one-lane ingredient. They can be used in different types of formulations, different routines, and different approaches. You'll see them in serums, creams, sprays, and even post-treatment products. They're especially popular after things like dermaplaning, microneedling, or anything that disrupts the skin barrier.
Why?
Because that's when the skin is in repair mode, and signaling becomes even more important. Now, let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough, and that's concentration and formulation. Just because a product says it has copper peptides doesn't mean it's effective. The amount matters. The formulation matters, and how it's delivered matters. Too low, and you may not see much. Too high, and you can run into issues like irritation or even the opposite effect of what you're trying to achieve. This is where the conversation gets more advanced, and honestly, where a lot of people get it wrong. Copper is a powerful element. In the right balance, It supports regeneration. In the wrong balance, it can become pro-oxidative. That means instead of helping, it can actually contribute to stress at the cellular level. So more is not always better. And that's something you need to understand if you're going to use or formulate with it. Now, let's shift into why brands are pushing it so hard right now.
Part of it is demand.
People are looking for ingredients that actually do something. The days of basic moisturizers being enough are fading. Consumers are more educated. They're reading labels, asking questions, and looking for science-backed ingredients. Copper peptides, check that box. Another part of it is differentiation. In a crowded market, brands need something that stands out. Saying you have a peptide-based product, especially one with copper peptides, immediately positions you as more advanced. It sounds scientific, and in many ways it is. But that also creates a problem. As something becomes more popular, it gets overused and sometimes misrepresented. You'll start seeing products that claim to have copper peptides but don't disclose how much, how it's stabilized, or how it's formulated. You'll also see marketing that exaggerates what it can do. So while copper peptides are powerful, not everything labeled with them is created equal. That brings us to another important point, and that's expectations. Copper peptides are not magic. They're not an overnight fix. They work through signaling and gradual processes. That means consistency matters. Time matters. And how you use them matters. If someone uses a product for a few days and expects a complete transformation, they're going to be disappointed. But if you understand what they do and give it time, that's where you start to see the real value. Now, let's talk briefly about why you're hearing GHK-Cu specifically so much. Out of all the copper peptides, GHK-Cu is one of the most studied. It's been looked at in areas like skin regeneration, wound healing, and even hair-related research. That level of research gives it credibility. And in today's world, credibility matters. People want to know there's something behind the ingredient, not just hype. That's why you'll see GHK-Cu mentioned over and over again. Another reason copper peptides are trending is the shift toward regenerative thinking. Instead of just covering up issues, people are looking for ways to support the body's natural processes. That's a big shift. And copper peptides fit right into that mindset. They're not about masking. They're about signaling, repair, and support. That aligns with where the industry is going. Now, let's talk about something practical. If you're looking at copper peptide products, focus on transparency. Look for brands that actually explain what's in the product, how it's formulated, and how it's intended to be used. Pay attention to how your skin responds. Start simple. You don't need 10 different products all at once. And remember that more isn't always better. Sometimes a well-formulated product used consistently will outperform a complicated routine. Now, let's zoom out for a second. The reason copper peptides are everywhere isn't just because they work. It's because they sit at the intersection of science, visibility, and demand. You've got decades of research, combined with modern communication, combined with a market that's actively looking for better solutions. That's the perfect storm for something to take off. And that's exactly what happened here. Before we wrap up, I want to say this again clearly. This episode is for educational purposes only. Nothing discussed here is intended as medical advice or a recommendation for use. It's your responsibility to research, verify, and make informed decisions within all applicable guidelines and regulations. If you take one thing from this episode, it's this. Copper peptides are powerful because they signal change, not because they force it. And once you understand that, everything else starts to make more sense. Thanks for listening, keep learning, and stay curious.